And you stay bewildered, I think, for a while. And I think that what I was initially, when I was thinking about making the film, I was coming from the place of there had been a film before, this Afghanistan film, and I thought maybe I could salvage the film and make a film. You know, I spoke of this young woman who was afraid that the Taliban was going to hurt her family. I was so attached to this project. I had worked for 3 years on it. I had all this beautiful footage, and so I thought I could make a movie out of it without her face in it. And she said, it's okay, you can use my voice. So I worked for a really long time using only footage from Afghanistan. And I wrote this voiceover, which was very Chris Marker inspired. And it was very pretentious. and I think this is meaningful for all of us. Like, why do we want to be artists or be writers or be journalists or make films? It's because at some point in our life we encountered something that blew our minds, right? Like, I can ask any person here, what blew your mind? What was the first thing that you saw that made you want to become a camera person?
Saving Private Ryan when they climb up the hill and suddenly there's a light streak breathing over the screen.
Yeah.
Like
a flare came.
Yeah. Went into, because the shutter went out of sync when you are filming and exposed.
Wow. Wow. And that's the moment.
Yeah.
And how beautiful is that? Because that's Spielberg doing a scripted film based on, he looked at footage that was actually shot in the war by actual camera people, and he was quoting that in how they shot that. And what you got out of it was this direct experience of being a camera person. Here comes the flare of the sun, right? Like, and that was the thing.
Well, the shutter was wrong
Yeah.
out of sync because of the explosion.
Yeah.
So light was streaking
Yeah.
into the film
Yeah.
outside like that.
And it sort of blew you away because you saw a different way a movie could be.
Yeah.
You saw something you'd never seen before. Somebody else, like, what's the moment of reading a novel or seeing a movie that woke you up to the world?
What made me short documentary is the way that you can sneak into someone's life.
Yeah.
Yeah, this I'm so addicted to that feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an addiction.
Yeah.
So and somehow these people, they don't share their real thoughts to their closest friends and relatives, but they share with you.
Yeah.
Because they think that you can share their stories to the
Yeah.
rest of the world.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of a responsibility for myself.
Yeah.
So that's really make me to continue this way.
And it's like, we don't know why, what is the thing that leads to the next thing. So I just had lunch with, where are you? Where is she? Lorraine. And Lorraine was saying, like, is this work sustainable? Right? Which is this new word, right, that we use, right? And not to expose you to the world, but this is the question that everyone's asking, right? Is it sustainable? But I think one of the questions for ourselves is like, what do we want with our lives? What are we trying to do with our lives? What is it to be sustained? What does that really mean? Is to be inspired, to be in a state of discovery, to be a responsible person, to be a loving person. Like, you could do a really long list of all the things of, like, how do I want to be a human on this planet? And one of the things that happens to us as humans is we get inspired, right? We see something that gives us a new worldview. And one question I often ask people is sort of, at what moment did you realize that your family was not all of society? And this I think we all have this experience, some of us earlier, some of us later, right? I lived in a family that was Seventh-day Adventist. My parents were Seventh-day Adventist. I thought our world was the whole world for a really long time because we lived in a world where it was sort of hermetic. Everyone believed the same thing. Nobody drank any alcohol. Nobody smoked cigarettes. Everyone believed an apocalypse was coming, right? And God knew our thoughts. So I thought that was the world. So you can imagine that, and we weren't allowed to watch movies. So you can imagine when I saw some movies, my mind was blown, right? And so this happens to people at different ages. Maybe immediately you understand my family is unlike every other family and the world is very different from my family. But I think this is like the fundamental beginning experience of when is this sort of crack in your version of the universe. So I think often we can trace it to a historical moment or a moment in the media. So one of my big moments was, you may all not know this story, but there was a family called the Hearst family that owned newspapers in the United States. And the young daughter, Patty Hearst, got kidnapped by revolutionaries in the United States. And she sort of went over to the side of the revolutionaries. And she came on television and she had a beret and a machine gun. And she called her parents capitalist pigs on television. And I must have been, I think I was 6 or 7. And I remember seeing it and just being like, you can say that? Like, I was like, wow. I was like, wow. Right? So I think there are these moments where like sort of media enters, the world enters our universe. So let's hear a few more moments of people. Like, what's the moment you realized your family was not the center of the world?
Gosh, I haven't really been through enough in my life yet, but I guess when I started like studying abroad, you get to meet different people from different backgrounds and cultures, and so you just sort of realize that's a complete different upbringing. So then it's actually completely normal.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, how's that possible?
Right.
Suddenly there's like this like error
Yeah.
in your brain.
You're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I thought I understood how everything worked.
Yeah.
Right? Right? Anybody else have like a moment where you saw something on television or there came the world, history entered your understanding of things? Yeah.
Not necessarily history, but more like a social interaction. I think it was like perhaps 3 or 4 years into my immigration in Canada. I was invited to a house party,
Mm-hmm.
and my mom drove me to the house, and I was greeted by the host.
Mm.
And the host is this guy, he's the same age as me, his name is Stu. Stu came out and said, hey, Colvin, gave me a shaking hand.
Mm.
I was so shy because I've never met Stu before.
Yeah.
I just ran right into the backyard
Yeah.
where all my friends were.
Uh-huh.
And this is the host of the party.
Yeah.
So after that, I realized how embarrassed I was and how lack of social understanding I had. And I realized it was something bigger than just what my family provided.
Wow, wow. And could you repair it in that moment, or you just thought about it later, or how did it?
I went home and I was like, idiot.
Wow, right.
Very memorable.
Yeah. It's, and I think these like moments of like, they're like moments of rupture in your life where suddenly the thing that you took to be is not the same. And so I feel like, I said that thing about Arthur Miller, of like the job of the artist is to reveal what is hidden. But I think in many ways, what artists also do, and I would say journalists, filmmakers, video, blah, like, you can substitute all these different words. What they also do is that they allow us to see a different vision of the world. And all it takes is a little contrast, right? Like, oh, doesn't everyone believe that Jesus is coming and there's an apocalypse coming? No. You can go to an entire country where everyone believes in a totally different God, right? I'm still waiting to go to the country where women are in control of everything. Haven't found that country yet. Still looking, but you know, so, and you see the sort of evidence of history in the world, and you're trying to make sense of it, but you enter into it and you're trying to figure it out, but then boom, you'll see something that is evidence of another world. So when I was in college, I saw a movie by Ousmane Sembène. And up until that point, all of the ways I had understood black culture and blackness was African American. And it was all about the history of African American society, and that was the history of slavery, and that was the history of oppression, and that was the history of people like getting beaten down. And then I saw this Senegalese film, and people were like doing their own thing. They weren't trying to prove anything to white people. It was a totally different culture, and I was like, wow. And it was really funny, and everything looked different, and I was like, whoa, where's that world? I've never seen that world. I want to go there. And so I was in college, and I started thinking of like, oh, so this idea of blackness, like it's a constructed idea, and how do people see it differently in the world? And I want to go to West Africa, and I want to go to Brazil, and I want to go to London, and I want to go to Paris, and I want to see all these different filmmakers who think about blackness in different ways. So, you know, I was 19 years old, like I have a vision, I know what I, and so I wrote this project, and I submitted. There was a final senior year grant that would give you $20,000 and you could go somewhere. And I was like, that's cool. I want to do that. So I made the first cut and went from 500 people down to 10, and they were going to give 3 grants. And I was like, I'm going to get this, you know? And it's my senior year of college, and I go to the jury meeting, and it was so clear. Everyone was like, why do you want to make a film about? Why are you interested in this? And I didn't get it. And I had made everything was planned. I'm like, I'm going to get this grant. I'm going to be able to do this way. And I didn't get it. And I had no plan. I didn't have money. I didn't know where I was going to move. It was May, and everyone was graduating, and everybody knew what they were going to do that summer, and I had no idea. I was so sure that I was going to get it that I didn't know what to do. And so this is like the best failure of my life, is what I am sharing with you. Like, I think like sometimes just like a total wipeout is fairly spectacular because you really become clear around what you want, right? Because I didn't get it, and I really wanted it. But I also really wanted like the certainty of what's going to happen next. What am I going to do? Where's the money going to come from? How will I sustain myself, right? And I didn't get it, and so I was desperate, and I was a little humiliated because I had told all these people, I'm going to Senegal, I'm going to Brazil, I'm going to be gone for 2 years, And so I basically was incredibly naive, and I said, okay, I'll work for the summer, and I'll buy a plane ticket to Dakar, and I'll go to Senegal, and I'll meet these filmmakers, and I'll make it happen, right? Sort of like the way I had. So I went to Senegal, and I didn't know it was a Muslim country. I didn't know people spoke French. I didn't know anybody, and it was incredibly expensive. And I had enough money to last me about like 2 weeks there. But I had arrived there, and I was like, wow, this is a whole other world. I want to stay. How am I going to stay? And I think that these kinds of stories, like, on the one hand, you can say, some people can take risks, right? Because some people have family that will send them money if everything falls apart. And some people can take risks because, like in my case, it's like, oh, here I am, like this white American person who shows up in Senegal, and everyone's like, what are you doing here? And you're interesting and you're safe. Whereas if you're a Syrian refugee showing up in Berlin, good luck to you, right? You have no money. There's too many of you. Nobody wants you to succeed, right? So I do think there's different possibilities for success or for failure. And part of that has to do with who you are on the outside, and part of it has to do with who you are on the inside. And some of us are up against much harder obstacles than others. And like, why can certain people become artists? Some people need to, and they do it no matter what, and they'll live in complete poverty. Some people have very wealthy families who help them do it, and they always have a backup. Some people, so there's this like range, right? So it's, you think about yourself and who you are, and you think about your family and the ways in which they can support you or not support you. You think about how conventional your family is, whether they can live with the fact that you don't know what your life is going to look like. You have to think about all of those things when you make these decisions about what you do in your life. Now, my parents were happy that I was going to go to Senegal if I had a grant, but I didn't have a grant and I didn't know anybody. So I told my parents, like, oh, I reached out to Usman Semben and he said I could come, and like, I made stuff up. I totally told them, like, I know people there and whatever, because I knew they wouldn't let me go. And I really wanted to go. And afterwards I was like, I barely told them anything. I think they trusted me and they trusted my instincts. Why? Nobody knows, right? But so these are these things, like, you're like, sort of, what's your relationship to risk? How much risk can you take? What will it mean if you take risks and you fail? So once I got there and I realized, like, I literally had the money to last me 2 weeks, and I couldn't say to my parents, like, actually, I don't have anybody here, and can you send me some more money? Like, that was not happening. So what was I going to do? So because I was American, there was an American Cultural Center, and I went there, and I, sort of went to the lobby, and I'm sitting there, and I'm looking around, and I hear a fight going on in the hallway, and I go down the hallway, and I listen to the fight, and someone's getting fired. And I'm listening, and you know how this story goes, right? Like, cut to 10 minutes later, I walk in and say, hi, I'm looking for a job as an English teacher. And they say, oh, that's incredible. We just fired this person. So, of course, like, I'd never taught English in my life, right? But I got a job teaching English, and I stayed in Senegal for 2 years. And I could speak English. I'm not an English teacher. I didn't have a family that came from filmmaking. I didn't have a family who'd ever traveled. I didn't have a family where people spoke other languages. I did have a family where my parents believed in me and trusted me. I did have a family where my parents had money that if I called them and said, I'm desperate, they would send me money. But I did have pride, and I wasn't going to do that, right? And I did have hustle. And I had need. I had discovered my need to discover the world and to stay, right? And what I wanted to do in my life was, like, I wanted to like understand, like, what is racism? How does it work? Why is it happening on this planet? That was a need of mine, because that had been the story of my childhood. It was filled with all kinds of issues of racism, because I'm an American and I'm born in 1965, right? So that was a need I had. And then I had this crazy need for visual stimulation. So, like, you're talking about your need to enter other people's world. Like, we have some needs we don't totally understand. Apparently, I came home from daycare when I was a little kid, and I said, no, go back. No, go back. And my mom was worried. She said, like, you know, what happened? Are you okay? And then I said, no pictures on wall. Right? I needed visual stimulation. That's who I am. So this thing of sort of trying to figure out, like, what's sustainable for you as a person is figuring out, what do you need? Who are you trying to be in the world? What do you need? And as you figure that out, you figure out how to make the next step, right? Because you can't plan it 20 years into the future, right? I was talking last night, all these young women say, how can I be a camera person and be a mother? Right? Because I do think, like, young women are being asked from really early on, how are you going to do all these things? Because you have to be a mother. Maybe you'll be a mother, maybe you won't be a mother, right? But I think society's not asking the same thing of men. Probably you'll be a father. You can worry about it later. But you have to earn money. But you have to have a career, right? We all have different social pressures coming on us. So we're trying to figure out, okay, how do I make this next step towards? So you've seen some incredible movie. You want to make a movie like that, right? I wanted to make a movie like Chris Marker. I wanted to make Apocalypse Now, as I recall. Like you have these, like you see something, you wanted to make Saving Private Ryan, right? Right? You see something and you're like, that just blew my mind. I want to do that. But how do you get from, where were you when you saw Saving Private Ryan? You were, yeah. And you just like, you know, you're in your little world that's disconnected from everything. You're like, I want to do that. But here's the distance between that and that. And maybe you don't look like anybody who's ever done that, right? Maybe you're a very small Asian woman and you want to make Apocalypse Now. How do you get there? That's never been done before, right? I'm one of 3% of women in the American Society of Cinematographers. How did I get here? Well, I got myself to Senegal after I figured out that I couldn't get those people to pay for me to get there, and then I figured out I gotta pay for myself to stay here. But then what did I do, right? Like, so then you're to your next, you just keep doing these like sort of next step, and there were things I knew. I want to travel. I'm interested in racism, and, you know, but I wanted to be a director. But then when I try, like, after Senegal, I realized there's this French film school. It's free if you can get into it. All right, but they'll never let an American go in as a director. So I have to go into one of the craft departments. So already, like, all of us would like to be the hero of our world. Like, I'm going to make Apocalypse Now. I'm going to be a director. I'm going to be a mother. I'm going to make a lot of money. I'm going to live with a view of the ocean. What else? Anybody else have any big like requests of like what we want from our dream life? Like, we all have a dream life. No idea how to get there. Maybe it has nothing to do with anything anyone in our world has ever dreamed before. So, but then, is it even possible? And it's true that there's all these obstacles set up against you. So one of the obstacles is your own ego, right? I'm 19 years old, I've never done anything, and I want to make Apocalypse Now. Settle down, right? Like, chill out a little. And don't. Dream as big as you possibly can, right? So what happened with my ego is if I had had it my way, I would have gotten into the directing department at the film school. But in fact, because I got some good advice from someone, they said, there's no way. And I think that's true. I think there was no way I would have gotten into French film school as an American. So understanding where you fit in the system. So understand if you're speaking the language that no one else speaks, that you look like no one else looks like, that you come from a poor family and you're the first one to go to college. Like, contextualize yourself. Step outside of yourself and realize it's not personal, but they don't want an American to get into the French National Film School as a director. That's not happening. Or supply yourself in the... So you have to think strategically and you have to think outside of yourself. There is discrimination. The system is set against you. There is nepotism. All of these things are true. And nobody owes you anything. And the world of extractive capitalism would like you to work until you die, and right? And they don't care if you make something interesting or not. They don't care if you critique the world. They don't care if you find a way to end maternal mortality, right? So you are motivating yourself, and you're also seeing yourself within a system. And you're not taking it too personally when you get rejected, because there's a huge amount of competition. And sometimes if you have a great failure, you realize, now I know what I want. So I went into the camera department at the film school and I discovered I love the camera. And I love the camera so much, I was like, I don't want to direct, I want to go to Brazil with this person, I want to go here with that person. And suddenly I was traveling, which I knew I wanted to do, learning different languages, which I knew I wanted to do, going into people's houses, which I love to do, right? But then I learned, so I got this job filming interviews with Holocaust survivors for the Shoah Foundation. And there was another camera person who was there, and he and I were talking about, like, well, how do you break into film, and how do you get jobs and whatever? And he said, well, my deal is I'm not going to work for less than this amount of money on a job. And I was like, wow, okay, that's cool. I want to do that. But then I'd get a call and someone would say, well, it's a human rights project and I don't have any money. And I'd say, well, I really want to work on that, but you don't have any money. And so then I'd call my friend, John, and he'd say, no, you gotta only take things with money. So then I'd get a call and say, well, you can work filming Victoria's Secret runway models. And I was like, well, that sounds kind of fun. I could maybe, yeah. And we want you to be the underwear cam because you're the only female camera person, and then the women won't care and they'll change their clothes in front of you, and so we can get the shots. So like, well, I don't know if I really want to do that, right? So there I am. I'm a woman within the system, right? So some people want me to work for free. Some people want me to work exploiting other women. They will pay me to do it, right? And then I was like, well, I could take the job and then not film them naked, and so you're realizing you have to. I came up with this sort of set of criterion of like, first, purposefully do no harm purposefully. If you, like Tessa, like our thing, it's like sometimes you do harm, but it's not what you're trying to do, right? But so like if part of your mission is like, I wish to be a person who does no harm in the world. I don't want to be a doctor who kills my patients. But to be a doctor, sometimes patients die, right? So okay, I want to be a filmmaker. I have to step into the morally complex world of entering other people's lives. But okay, I'm going to try not to do harm. I'm going to understand that I don't yet know how to use enough equipment. So I'm going to take some jobs where I get to try equipment. I realize that I'm one of the rare women doing this job. So I got to convince people that I know what I'm doing, even though I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm going to take some risks. I'm going to say that I can shoot certain cameras, even though I don't know how to shoot certain cameras, but I'm going to, call the rental house and talk to the person I've been nice to at the rental house who's going to help me figure out how to use the camera. I'm not going to be arrogant because I'm going to need a lot of help to do this, right? And I don't want to be in this world and treat other people poorly. So I'm being nice to everybody, but now everybody wants me to work for free with them. So then I call my friend John, and every time that I get a job offer, he'll say, no, you got to ask for more money. So then I'll call the person back and they'll say, we don't have any money. And then finally I realize, okay, it's like fast, cheap, and good, right? You can't get all three at the same time. So it's like ethical, pain, learn new technique, work on something meaningful. Like you've got this like list of things. You're not going to get it with every job. You got to make a living. So you figure out which three of the things it's doing. So it might be really well paid, really great equipment, amazing people, but they're doing something that you're just like, I cannot personally live with that. That's morally wrong. You're like, okay, I'm not taking that job. The most amazing, ethical, visionary thing, lousy equipment, they have no money. I've done that job a lot of times. But it turns out, I realized, okay, you can't get everything in every job, and the really cool stuff rarely has any money. So then what I would do is realize, like, okay, you work a certain amount of time on a certain kind of jobs for a certain amount of money, and then you preserve time where it's like, this is free time. I'm giving X amount of, and I was never this organized, but basically I knew a percentage of my time I would work for free with really promising people on really great ideas that I believed in and take risks with them. And all of a sudden, I had films that were getting into Sundance. And my friend John was working for the House and Garden Network doing stuff that he started to hate because he would always and only take money, right? Whereas I was taking money part of the time. Other time I was taking the joy of collaboration, the hope of working on a great film. And so you're sort of, you're always doing that, right? And at some moments it feels like a shell game where there's no money. None of these films are ever going to get finished. That one I just took a risk on is taking 6 years. That one's taking 7 years. That one, right? But then all of a sudden,
There's also one more thing.
Whoa.
Survival, sustainability is lower your standard of living.
Ooh. That's a good one. Well, it depends what standard of living you start with.
Well, so live in the Lower East Side,
Right.
live in a tenement building, or walk up,
Right.
and just, go to a used clothes store and then get, that way.
Yeah.
And it can still be funky.
Right.
It can still be okay.
Right. Yeah.
And your friends help.
Yeah. No, and I think so. Like some of the things that I'm fun to travel with. I'm easy to travel with. I am easy to collaborate with, right? So that these things that you're like, oh, I don't know if I know the equipment well enough, or I don't know if I this well enough. It's like you find the things that you enjoy doing and being, and then like the world will open up a next step for you. So okay, I'm not going to live in the most expensive neighborhood. Turns out, like, what a great loft, and people can do interviews here, and then they can rent this to be able to do that. Like, so people find all different kinds of ways to do it. Like, so a lot of camera people I knew would eventually like rent their equipment, and they were running like a rental house. I could not keep track of that to save my life. That was like a nightmare to me, and I did it a whole different way. But one of the big things I think is like living with uncertainty, which is all of what this work is about too. It's like you don't know what the film's going to look like. You don't know where you're going to get the money from. You don't know how long it's going to take. Can you live with that as a person? And I think like this idea of finding one part, like doing a job that is a job that people can pay you to do, like being an editor, like being a camera person, like being a sound person, you get experience, but you also have some consistency. You have something that you can rely on. If you're like, I'm only going to be a director, figure out like, okay, can I live with a very low overhead? Because in some ways, none of this is making any money. But in other ways, there's a ton of money in this field, right? But there's all kinds of things that people want us to make that aren't very interesting. And how much of your life do you want to spend making things that aren't very interesting? Hopefully as little as possible, because none of the rest of us want to watch that stuff either. And that could be a documentary. Some documentaries are not interesting at all. Please do not spend years of your life making a boring documentary, right? It can be in any form, any genre. Something can be, like, look at Get Out. I don't know how many of you have seen that. Like, it's a cheap genre film that's like changing the way everyone thinks about race. Fantastic. What is your need? So it's like, and don't think you know what the form is going to be. My other like embarrassing moment is I worked on this film about the death penalty in the United States, and we were really like, super earnestly making this film about racism with the criminal justice system and the death penalty, and we got the film to Sundance, and it premiered the same year as Super Size Me, and like nobody cared about our film. Our film was a serious film, that was a fun film, and so we got no offers, nothing. And then late into the festival, this woman comes up to us and said, "You didn't call my husband back. He came to your film, he gave you his card, he liked the film." And we were like, and she's like, "I don't think you understand who my husband is. Like, he's the head of NBC." And this was just, one of the national channels, and we were like, "Oh, okay." And then we got this crazy offer to show the film on national television. But they were going to put commercials in it. And I was like, "But we've made an independent film. And I want to open at Film Forum in New York. And I want to review in the New York Times. Because I have an ego." And the co-director of the film, Katie Chevigny, was like, "Wait a minute, I think we made this film because we wanted to critique the criminal justice system. It's going to go on television and 6 million people are going to see it." And I was like, "Oh, right." And so we ended up cutting it and letting commercials be in the middle of it. And, like, you make these decisions that are imperfect decisions, because the world's not giving us Apocalypse Now when we're 19 years old, unless we're some crazy lucky. And the fact is, there are a few people like that, right? But it turns out most of those people have a story you don't quite understand about why they're that person. And it, probably is because they're from a connected family and they're this and they're that, but it's also other things about their need, right? So it's like what you got to do is drill down and understand what is your own need, and it will be needs plural. And they can not all be met simultaneously. And you don't even understand your needs because you're a monkey on the back of a tiger's, right? With a little steering wheel disconnected to nothing. All right, now ask me questions. Get carried away. Get all excited. 3 o'clock. I think we should watch something soon. Yeah. Yeah.
Have you ever encountered that the movie that you thought was perfectly crafted wasn't exactly the way it looks on the screen, and because I find that it's very idealistic to see this industry as something that will really allow you to explore things, but in reality, I find that a lot of filmmakers actually set a lot of things up to a certain way.
So you're saying like they're false. They're not what they say they're being. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So so you just stick to what you believe is good ethics, and then you just.
Well, I think it's like. It's so big, right? I mean, I think that we understand, like, we are constructing realities, even if we're making an observational documentary. By bringing the camera in, by being there in our interactions, we are constructing a version of what happened. Now, there's a far cry from like the actually doing it with the purpose of creating propaganda or with the purpose of getting a particular politician elected or with the purpose of hiding something corrupt that is happening, to being someone who is doing something like, I'm going to ask a person to walk down a hallway because I just missed that shot. But that still reads as false if you ask a person to walk down the hallway, right? And so can you be involved in filmmaking that's aware of the idea of performance? Like that humans perform for each other, even just in a casual interaction. I am performing for you right now. That's pretty obvious, right? I would speak differently to you if I was sitting with one of you and speaking to you. Am I false? I have told stories that I've told several times. I've told them with different details. My story of what happened to me in Senegal with me getting that job, I don't know how, I know that happened, right? I heard an argument, I got a job. I can't even remember how it happened. It did happen. So this is, and so like the way I tell you the story, I could spend an hour telling you that story, or I could tell it in 2 sentences. How accurate is that story? All of these things, we're all wrestling with how does truth function, what is truth, what is the observation of reality. But I think, like I'm saying, it's going on and it's very complicated and very dense. And so I think that I struggle when I work on projects where I feel like we're not being respectful of people. So for those of you who saw Cameraperson or saw the trailer, that old woman from Bosnia, we were pressing her to describe her victimization. She did not want to. She didn't want to talk about her family being killed. She didn't want to talk about rapes that happened. She didn't want to talk. And we were pressing her because we were making a film about violence in Bosnia. I couldn't stand it anymore. And I did something that is not correct within the hierarchy of filmmaking. I interrupted and I said, wow, you've really got great fashion. And she was like, yes, I do, don't I? Because I couldn't stand anymore that we were only asking her, only valuing her because she was victimized. Because at that point in my life, I'd worked on many movies where we only cared about people in relation to their victimization for the purposes of the movies. And I saw the way that crushes people, right? A label like you're a refugee. It makes other people look down at you. You stop being seen as a full human, right? How do you treat someone with their full complexity if you're only asking for one part of them? So these are like, struggle. Does that answer anything? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So sort of relating to that, have you ever said no to a director on location? I mean, you said about the tracking shot.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to do that ever again.
Yeah.
But especially as a hired freelance camerawoman.
Yeah.
Did you ever say no to a director's instruction?
Absolutely.
No.
Absolutely.
What are the examples of?
Well, I mean, there's certain directors I said no a lot to and then never worked for again, right? And I recently was in a situation I totally regret not saying no, which involved the way was another camera person, and it was the way he was treating his female assistant. And it was totally, I'm not going to even say borderline abusive. It was abusive. And I went to her and I said, it's not okay. The way he's treating you is not okay. And you need to stand up for yourself a little bit more. And so I told her that in private. But she had been being his assistant for a couple of years, and it was their relationship. And she continued to, and it was not okay. He was blaming her for things that he had set her up to fail for. And I had heard about this person. I'd met another young woman, and she said, oh, I really wanted to be a camera person. And I was like, well, why aren't you? And she said, well, my mentor said that I wasn't really adapted for this. And I said, who is your mentor? And she told me the name of this guy, right? So then I see this guy on the set, like crushing this young woman and bringing him, you're nodding. Have you seen something like this happen before? Yeah, because you have a lot of insecurities when you're doing the work, because you don't know how to do it. So one of the ways people cope with their insecurities is to crush other people and to pretend they know and to be bullies with their knowledge, right? And this is how you retain your power, certain people think. I don't think this, but so when she did not stand up for herself, you know, it is in a context of power. She would lose her job. She would lose her assistantship. She's invested all this time in this person. He is a powerful person in the field. And what I now think I should have done was say, like, I'm going to walk off this job. Like, this behavior is not acceptable on this set. I'm walking off this job. But I didn't do it. I had really, like, you know, like, I felt like, okay, I said it to her. But then in retrospect, I said, she's the one who's being abused, and she's within the power structure that she wants to be a part of, right? And I was more powerful than her. I wasn't the most powerful person on the set, but it would have made a big ripple if I'd walked off the set and made the director understand, like, why am I letting that happen on my set? And so there have been times, like, that's the time where I'm just like, recently, I'm just like, why did I do that? Because I wanted the job too, right? And I was one of the only other women on the set. So why didn't all the other men on the set do that? Right? So I blame myself in the same way that I was giving her the only responsibility. I'm only giving myself the responsibility. So it's a challenging thing sometimes when you're within a hierarchy and you're one of the rare people within a hierarchy to say no. But yeah, I've definitely done it, I think, when I feel like people are, that like it's actively exploitive. But I've also failed to do that when it was actively exploitive. Yeah. But a lot of times it's like, I think directors, you can question choices, like move out of the situation, talk about it that night at dinner, whatever. Like there are ways to do it and that are not only a critique and an attack and like I'm principled and you're not. Because it's rarely that simple either, right? But you can be yourself. Yeah.
Are you able to more like comfortably go against the director's instructions, like kind of after years of experience? Like when you started out, did you kind of tend to just?
Well, no, because I think there's like, I think you don't work with anybody who treats you poorly or who treats other people poorly. Because they'll just keep doing it. Right? And so it's like it's not worth it. And you know, like that's easier said than done in certain circumstances, right? But like have that as a principle, and then like, but also trust and respect other people and be like, okay, I see this going on. I'm not comfortable with it. Can we talk about it? And then you have people who are like, it didn't even occur to them because they're so busy. It's like the director who didn't want to eat lunch because she was psyched to not eat lunch and she was thinking about the movie. It's like, no, we need to eat lunch, right? You just bring things to people's attention. It is like being in relationships in the world. That's all that it is. And you can do it your way. and you can change the culture by you create the culture, because often a documentary shoot is like 3 people. You're creating the culture of how you treat people, and they need you, even if you're young and starting out and whatever. Like, you're not just replaceable because you're you. There's nobody else like you. You're not replaceable, actually. So like, if you've been showing them what makes you special about being there, they should want you to stay there. What else? Yeah.
So one of the documentaries that inspired me a lot was Citizenfour.
Yeah.
Because I think it was really able to show the magnitude of what happened, and I'm personally a fan of it. And I think my question to you would be: do you think that after the movie you did enough in terms of raising awareness on this issue about these tools that can be abused? Since I think when I quote Edward Snowden, he says he would rather face imprisonment than curtailing intellectual freedoms. So, do you still think that this was enough to raise awareness? And
I think like there is no rest. Like, there is no rest on this planet. Like, nothing is ever enough. Like, when you see the kind of suffering and difficulties that are on this planet, right? Like, our work is not done in any way, shape, or form. But I do think sometimes to give yourself, like, to honor, wow, like, how did that happen? Like, how did Citizenfour happen? It's like a pretty extraordinary story. And it goes back to, this person, Edward is his own story, right? But it goes back to this person, Laura, who I think is a person who started out as a chef and then got interested in filmmaking, and in her steps along the way, she lives really close to 9/11, where 9/11 happened, and it was one of those things where she's like, what's happening to my country? And she took that really personally. So that, not having traveled in the world very much, she went to Iraq when the war started there, and she made a film called My Country, My Country. And from that, she then realized, oh, I feel really uncomfortable with the war on terror. Maybe we should watch, I know what we should watch. Let's watch her. Have you seen this film called Death of a Prisoner? Okay, great. So, right, is it enough? Not enough. But also, so what do you do with the problem of, you believe there are people who are innocent who are in prison somewhere, and they are invisible, and you are not allowed to film them, right? So what Laura did was, she had the opportunity to go to Yemen with this lawyer. And she went and she visited many different families. And along the way, somebody said, oh, do you want to talk to this man, Abu Jandal? He was Osama bin Laden's bodyguard. So she was there thinking, I'm going to make a film about innocent prisoners in Guantanamo. She gets introduced to Osama bin Laden's bodyguard. She says, okay. And then she's sucked off into making another film, which is The Oath. 5 years after this, Adnan Latif dies in Guantanamo, and she is reading the paper, and she says, I visited his family. So she goes back to her footage, and she looks, and she finds this scene of Adnan's brother. So then she calls the journalist, the Yemeni journalist who we met working on the film about Abu Jandal, and says, can you go and film Adnan's body being taken in the coffin to his family. So because he is a Yemeni man, he can film that scene. And because he can speak Arabic and he introduces himself to people, he knows who Adnan's uncle is and who Adnan's son is. So that you then see the brother, the son, and the uncle, and you see that kid's, and that camera person films that kid's eyes. And every time I see this, I think, where is Adnan's son now? What is he doing? What did it mean to him to lose a father in Guantanamo? And that's, how many years after, right, these things move. But because of what the camera person knows, in that case, they're able to make a film that has different meaning. Because Laura made a relationship with a Yemeni journalist and was respectful of it, she could call him 5 years after we worked together and have him go and film that footage. And because they had talked about aesthetic ideas together, they could reference films they had both seen, and he could shoot it in that beautiful way. And then Laura talks to a composer, and then you construct all these pieces, but what happened in that room with the uncle, that really happened, right? But you've then taken all of these pieces, put music on top of it, put text, given it context. You've constructed something, you've made something. And you made a short film. This is a thing that's happened in the time that we've been making films, right? Like it used to be you could only make a feature-length film. And then all of a sudden, as journalism was shifting and the New York Times was like, we got to get some video on our site, people started making short films. And Laura started making short films because we had these like little fragments, right? So this is why I made The Above, this is why this film got made. But just yesterday, I saw this incredible new film that Laura has produced, and I want to show it to you because I think there are many different ways visually to tell stories, and I want to show you this that just came out yesterday. Like, okay, you have this giant, powerful thing, which is the NFL, which has evidence of what's happening, cannot admit it, because it does not want to admit it, right? And we read newspaper reports about concussions, and we've seen a fiction film, and now there are letters from the wives of football players who are having these problems. There's a film that was made called Gleason, which follows, one person in verite observational footage. But look, here's this guy who does work with data. And he's like, we have it in plain sight. It's happening in front of us. All we have to do is look at the images. But we have to slow the images down, reverse them to give us the space to think about it and to see it in a visceral way and say, this is the same spectacle that we're watching and enjoying as sport, and we're watching people get traumatic brain injuries in front of us, right? But no one wants to see it. It's right in plain sight. So a film like this says, I reverse it, I slow it down, now you can see differently. What was hidden becomes visible. But this is this crazy landscape we're in. It's like, how do we get people to see what we see? And sometimes it's you use the tools that already exist. The footage already exists. You just have to have the need and the idea, and you imagine it differently, right? So I think that this work is really interesting work because we, no, it's not enough. There's more to be done. But how do we do it in a way that impacts people and is meaningful? And these are all questions. So, but first, before we do that, we're going to watch something so inventive that I want to share with you, and it will give us good energy for doing our next work. So I'm just thinking about this thing of constraints, right? There are so many constraints in our lives, money, time, the impossible things we struggle against, right? The NFL or whatever. So at the beginning of 2011, I was doing a lot of traveling in the Middle East because I'd been working on several different films. And, there was sort of the beginning of what was called the Arab Spring. And in different countries, people were starting to rebel against their respective governments. But there were certain countries where there was going to be no rebellion. And Saudi Arabia was one of them. And, there are very specific constraints that exist in Saudi Arabia. And I met this incredible group of young men who were trying to figure, like, if they lived in another country, they would be rebelling. But they lived in Saudi Arabia, so they knew they could not. So they were, very clever. And so they made something where they followed all of the rules. So in Saudi Arabia, we're not allowed to have men and women in a video together. You're not allowed to have music. Many different list of things you cannot do. And at the time in Saudi Arabia, women are not allowed to drive. So here's the thing that they made. Maybe some of you have seen it. It's really great. And made with very simple means. So they had 10 million views. The entire country saw it. They didn't get in trouble because they didn't do anything wrong. They did everything right. But, and this is satire, right? Satire and humor, you can do a lot. But they inspired this whole debate in their country about whether it made sense to have this law where women couldn't drive. And they didn't get thrown into jail, which they could have. And because they had made something that was funny, but also that broke no rules, they rode in this perfect sweet spot, right? Which it's just, for me, it's like such a great example of, like, if you can't find a way, there is another way. You have to keep searching for the way, right? So, okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to take 15 minutes, and you might have to move so you're sitting next to somebody else. So what you're going to find out from this person that you don't know is, what is their need? And they may tell you something really easily. You know that they are a monkey on a tiger's back without a steering wheel. So learn more about really what is their need. And then this is a private conversation between the two of you. Nobody has to share more than they want to share. And you're not going to share with the group what is their need. But you have to come up with a question to ask me that will help them with their need. And they will do the same for you. Okay? Does this make sense? Anybody have questions? Okay, one more time. Okay, so you're going to sit down with this person, and you're going to find out what is their need. And this can be any shape or form. Maybe my need is, I really want to make something beautiful and I don't know how. I really want to figure out how to make money. But you have to ask them questions and figure out, what is the need about? Where is it coming from? You're each going to get about 8 minutes, 7.5 minutes.
Related to this class?
No.
Anything, right?
Anything. We all have many needs.
Like I need,
What do you need, Nancy?
I don't know what I need.
See? So this is a problem. But this is why the person asking the questions, I'm going to find out Nancy's need in the break. We all have needs, and sometimes we don't even know what they are, right? So it is the job of the person doing the questioning to find a real need. And if they are giving it too easy, then you haven't found it, really, right? So you have to do a little searching. And then we'll give you 7 minutes, and then I'll give you a moment to formulate the question. Okay, so you don't have to think of that while in these 7 minutes. It's just pay attention to the other person. They're going to pay attention to you. Then we're going to take a moment and write down the question that is going to help them with their need that you're going to ask me. Okay? It's complicated. You guys can do it. If you can make movies. Okay, so everyone, are there people sitting next to their friends who need to move? Does everybody, okay, everyone move a little bit. Find some person you don't know. Woo. And you can move around or whatever. Okay, and we are going to, so I will tell you at, yeah, in 7 minutes. So get going. Now, you're each going to take a moment, and this is where you've learned something from the other person, but you have some insights into them that maybe they don't have into themselves. You maybe understand their need a little bit or not at all, depending on how good at asking questions you are. So now I want you to just sit and think about what is the question that you're going to ask me and the group that might help with their need. So this is where we think about like the construction of the filmmaker, right? You are now, you've gathered some information. You're going to communicate it in a different form to all of the rest of us, and you're going to transform it, but using your own point of view, right? So not unlike the concussion film, your question is going to hopefully be a question that will give the person you've been talking to a new understanding of what they are saying. I'm asking you this is no small order, right? This is a challenging thing. But why don't we take 3 minutes? Yeah, you gotta do it. 3 minutes and come up with a question that will meet the need of the other person. That might help the other person with their need. Don't talk to each other. You got to do it on your own because you're doing it for the other person. They're doing it for you. Does everybody notice how nice the sound of silence is? It's nice, right? It's over now. So the time is up. Notice how seriously you took the task, because it was someone else's need that you were trying to express. So thank you for doing that. And now, when the other person is going to ask their question, notice how it makes you feel. You may feel that you were really heard, that the person really listened to you and understood things about you that surprise you. You may feel the other person did not understand you. Notice how that makes you feel. And if you can, while you're listening, try to let go of your ego and actually listen to what the other person is saying. It might be more relevant than you imagine. So let's begin. I'm going to take notes as I just to remember. So introduce. Who did you speak to? Pamela. Okay. So what is the question?
Do you have a time that you ever doubt yourself, and how can you get over it?
Okay. So do you ever doubt yourself, and can you get over it? Can you work with it? Okay. Okay. Who did you speak to? Uh-huh.
You have all these choices in front of you, and can I come back to it?
Yeah. Well, I want to clarify with you. When you say, "Who do I have doubt?" Is that the question? Have I had doubt, and how have I gotten over it?
Doubt yourself.
Yeah. Do I doubt myself, Kirsten? Okay, got it. Giving you another go at it. I'll give you more time. I'll go to Fatih and come back.
I spoke to Roy,
Mm-hmm.
and I would like to ask, what would be a good way for experienced filmmakers to interact with other filmmakers to find out about different interests?
Great. Great. Got it?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Do you have a mentor or a good friend that you've got all these choices in front of you? Do you have someone you can trust and talk to and help you out with this, to make this decision?
Okay, yeah. Can everyone hear? Yeah? Okay.
So the question is, how do you become someone you want to be?
Nice question. Okay. All right.
I've talked to Anna, and then how did you decide, or how did you switch the role from cameraman, from someone who listened to director instruction to becoming a director to give instruction to others? How to be creative with the production stuff.
Okay. How about you?
I talk with Don,
Uh-huh.
and my question is, do you have a moment like when you feel bored and unsatisfied with what you're doing, and how did you deal with this situation?
Yeah.
I talked to Michael. The question is, how do you know when you found the thing?
Ooh, like it. I like it. Wow, right? Okay, how about you?
I talked to Andy, and then the question is, how do you find people that have a similar vision or similar value as you, and how do you collaborate with them?
Okay. Okay.
Oh, my question to you, Yan, is what do you think you need to learn in order to start your own company?
I talked to Calvin, and my question is, if you have a full-time job right now, can you do any limited spare time in order to find an inspiring story that you
Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking to John, and my question is, what is the best choice for you as being an independent movie director? Is by taking a movie degree or just more practice?
This is Taylor, and should I keep following my instinct if I have made wrong decisions before?
That's a good one. Okay.
All right, I talked to Shane. Yeah. And the question is, how do you do time management when you spread yourself very thin among other things? Long list of priorities.
I talked to Lisa, and my question is, how can you work with uncertainty?
How can you do it?
Work with uncertainty.
Yeah. Okay. Who'd you talk to?
I talked to Yingxin, and I asked her how she find her find her way to change from a journalist student to study education, PhD student in education.
I love it. The camera people are speaking. Yes.
Talked to Tana, and then I asked her what about her future plan, and then how she wants to reach her final goals, and then gradually find her final ways towards it.
Neither of you listened to me, did you? Because in some ways, you have both repeated what you didn't invent a new question for the other person. Like you hear everyone else here has invented a new question. What happened? Did you not understand what I asked? Yeah, it was language, right? Maybe? See, right? So it's language. You didn't, so this is a thing that happens whenever you are filming. You think you understood and you didn't understand. And you are trying, and you are trying now to understand me, and I talk too fast. And now I will slow down a little bit. But this happens, and it's fine. There is no shame in making mistakes. But sometimes we have to speak them, because then we understand, shift. So I think shame is one of the biggest obstacles to doing meaningful work and to learning. Shame is one of the biggest obstacles to learning. So I realized that you did not understand my question. And I told the group, and you are worried. I'm sorry. It's okay.
It was not me not understanding, just a little bit out of mind.
Yeah.
Sorry about it.
But you don't have to be sorry. You don't have to be sorry. That's what I am saying. We get taught that we are not allowed to make mistakes, or that we are not allowed to misunderstand. And misunderstanding happens when you don't have all the tools to understand, right? Sometimes language is the missing tool. Sometimes we don't have shared experience, so we can't even understand each other. We are coming from such different places or cultures. It's a long way between us to understand each other. And what I want to say to you is making mistakes is the most useful, beautiful thing in life, because it's like my failing to get the grant to go to Senegal. Then you understand new things when you fail or when you make mistakes. And you can either take it as humiliation and punish yourself and shame or be unkind to yourself, or You can be gentle with yourself and realize I did not have all of the tools to not make a mistake. It's very simple. If you are born in a place, you did not control where you were born. I'm born a white person in the United States. I have to do a lot of work to understand the racism of the United States. I am working every day to understand it. Right, Nancy? I still have a lot of work to do. It's a long journey. It will be the journey of my entire life. Nancy and Ruby also are doing...
I think you are a lot more understanding than a lot of other people.
Yeah, well, I got a lot...
That level
Yeah,
higher.
but a lot of work to do. And each time because I am born in this country that says white people are more important than everybody else, I grew up many years of my life, my childhood, this is natural state. And then I started to say, wait a minute, something's wrong with this picture. Even when I'm little, 5, 6, I started to say, something's wrong. I don't understand it. But then I keep making mistakes, making what I would call stupid white person mistakes, because you are raised in a world where only your world makes sense until you start discovering other people's worlds. So it is in making those mistakes, misunderstanding, needing clarification, that you share with other people your humanness and you have respect for their humanness, right? So shame, it makes us be hard on ourselves and makes us self-protective and breaks the openness that is possible, right? And we punish ourselves. And if we are doing creative work, we have to be rigorous and aspire and have imagination, but you also have to be kind to yourself and accept, I made a mistake. I didn't understand. Oops. Oh, I hurt someone's feelings. And you can apologize. One is allowed to apologize, but not for something like you don't speak a language, right? Any of this making any sense to you? A little bit. Yeah. She's like, I'll get back to you on that. All right.
Because I was doing the camera work,
There.
I was a little bit out of mind.
Yes, yes, yes. So, in fact, she had a different job to do, right? And she was doing her job, and it's hard to multitask. And you were doing your job well. So, there's often a reason why we are not able to do all things. And so this, you must be kind to yourself, and maybe there is a reason why you have failed or you have done something that doesn't work. And it is not, you should not feel shame about it, right? It's interesting. It's interesting information that now you are learning the job of how do I do camera work and listen at the same time. This is the next question for you as a camera person, right? It's a new question. That's kind of exciting. It took me 5 years to learn that. You already know. Now you know. How do I listen while I film? This is like a fundamental thing you need to do as a camera person. You just saved yourself 5 years worth of work. What is your question? Oh, sorry. You did, right? And we're going this way. We're all finished. Everyone?
Yeah.
This entire row? All right, let's go this way. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I don't remember what you were saying. Oh, yeah. Okay, keep going. Yeah.
How much has money been a hindrance to your film project?
Good.
Okay, I talked to Lisa, and the question is, how do you find the perfect partner or collaborator? And if you don't, how do you manage your expectations working with other people in this industry?
Good.
I talked to Matthew,
Mm-hmm.
and my question is, how do you stay safe and warm? I mean, what makes you feel safe and warm when you live in a foreign cold city and not
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I talked to Joe, and my question is, do you think you find the direction, like, you want to go in, like, in doing your projects?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
I just interviewed Lenny,
Mm-hmm.
and I would like to ask, first she tell me which medium language she would like to express herself.
Mm-hmm.
Would be words, would be images, would be sound,
Mm.
would be body performance,
Mm.
plastic
Mm.
artists.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
That's very natural. And then the question should be like, how can you present you as a human or identity more specific when you as a foreigner in another countries?
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm.
I talked to Pai, and the question is, how do you feel sleepy while you are having a job?
How do you do what?
How do you feel really sleepy?
Very good question. Mm-hmm.
I talked to Eunice. I think the question is like, how do you use visual language to reveal what's surprising and unexpected about the city?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Joyce.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the question should be like, everyone has different understanding of what truth is, but how do you define your kind of authenticity?
You are really worried about truth right now, aren't you? Good. Okay.
Oh, I talked to Carmel, and my question is, how could you start a project which is artistic and creative about the homeless people in Citizenfour, a very poor district?
I talked to Raymond, and my question is, can you ignore other classmates' working style and continue your own way on some perspective?
Wow. Wow. Nice. Find your own way. Okay.
I spoke with Henry, and the question is, when you're working so much, how do you find the time or energy to have a family?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I spoke to Adrian,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you mentioned that you have a set of principles,
Mm.
but maybe a sense of purpose in what you do. But first of all, is it tiring to keep up with all these principles while making documentary? And if so, how do you find peace in yourself in the process of documentary?
I'm exhausted.
I spoke to Ayaka.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, how can you free yourself of other people's ideas and expectations so that you can realize your own true power and potential?
Wow, I feel like you're ready to write a self-help book there. It's good. Go.
I talked to Etienne.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, how to promote yourself working great projects before you have an established portfolio or connections?
Mm-hmm. 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 How do people know how fabulous you are? You can tell.
My name is Dixon, and the question is, how do you want to achieve something that was normally seen to be impossible?
Mm-hmm.
Check with Eunice. My question is, when she's working alone and facing something, she feels negative.
Mm-hmm.
The people or things, how bad it can be.
Mm.
She solves the problems.
Mm.
And will she transform such experience to her past work?
Mm. Mm.
This is Sky, and my question is, can the desire to see the world with new eyes be perpetually renewed and expanded, and can you build a community based on this idea?
Nice. Really good questions. I have some All right, so I'm going to show you something that I was asked to apply for a fellowship, and I made, this is going to take me, I should have done this earlier, sorry people. Got to sign in. So I made this little map. Oh, great. I'm never going to see my email again. Yes. Ooh. All right. Never. Yeah, right? It's a big mess. That's how I organize myself. So I was asked to apply for this fellowship called the Art of Nonfiction. And so this is what I sent them. I decided I would try to communicate in images more than words. So I write, "My dear Art of Nonfiction friends, thank you for this invitation. I want to think, talk, and work with you on all of these questions. I am in the thick of Cameraperson, living its distribution, meeting its people, imagining the ways it will go on forever into the future. And I am nurturing new ideas, want to seize the moment to be continued to be supported as a filmmaker. Thank you for imagining that this Art of Nonfiction experiment is something I want, need, hope to be a part of. Your generosity, vision, love is big." Then I wrote, "Buster Keaton, visual comedy, look back, forward, be a body in film." That's me. So, creative ideals. Push the form, confront internal fears, be decent, contribute to acknowledgement of inequality in the world, enjoy, ask significant questions. And then I drew this clock. So on this clock is kids, co-parents, my dad, make films, travel, love, remember, fight demons, injustice, mentor, teach, dream, make money, save money, film, brainstorm, relax, sleep, self, move, body, friends. And I just did this really loose. And then I did the nice, right? I'm very happy with this. I had really fun making visual connections between ideas, and they gave me new ideas. So what I'm going to ask you to do for tomorrow, when you come back, everybody listening, even if you're filming, you're listening. So make yourself a clock any way you want, and you can use this as a model, or you can make it a clock of your whole life, or so represent time in some way, and put any kind of desire, need, anything on the list you want to put on the list. And then I would like you to connect it to an image. And it can be just it doesn't have to look like the image, but just connect it to an image in any way you want. Okay? So that is what I would like you to bring tomorrow, is your clock and your image. And if this is a hard world in which people can't print images very easily. If you have to find your image on your phone, and bring your phone in and show me an image on your phone, I will accept this. So it might be that the image you are bringing is the image of something you want to make, right, in the future. It can be any image at all. I'll take you through this a little bit further. But the other thing tomorrow, if there are any of you who have footage or a scene or something like that that you would like to show and for us to talk about, can we do that, Nancy? Is there a way that we can do it? So what should they do? Should they send a link or a hard drive? Or? Okay.
Before 9 o'clock of tonight.
Nice. Yeah.
So all the participants, the non-MJ should have my email that I sent you. And I think the MJ have my email. So.
Should be short, not thick, because we have 35 people, so we should use our time, and should be not more than 5 minutes maybe.
Yeah, I think not. Yeah. And we'll see how many people send stuff or want to show stuff. If you all want to show something, we're going to have to draw straws. We will find a way to do it. But if you want to show something and for us to talk about it, that would be great. So you can do that. I would love if everybody come tomorrow as a way of thinking about sort of what are your need. So with my clock, I put all of the things I want to be doing, and my film category, look at that, I have filmed twice without even knowing it, right? So it's a big need of mine. My many other things didn't get as big a circle. I love how my make money circle is like disappearing, tiniest as tiny can be. But so be as free as you want to be with how you make your clock and what you put on your list and how you draw it, but make the clock of need and connect it to an image that is meaningful to you. So I'll just go down this a little bit more. So this I was sort of explaining to them what was happening with Cameraperson. Tess, back to your question. This is the father of the baby from the film. And so I say photos I took in Kano, Nigeria, one of the places and families from Cameraperson I still need to return to and show the film to, right? So that's all still happening. There's the mom of the baby in the middle, right? So here's my beautiful monkey and tiger. These are some ideas I have. What does aestheticizing other people's pain do? I made a list of subject interests. It's coming back. Ah! I hate when I do things like this. Where did my thing go? It's gone. It's gone away. Please make it come back. Where did it go, friends? You think I just, I'm always like, do I have it mirrored? I thought I had it mirrored, sorry. No, why that one's. So I love the collaborative, performative photos of Vivienne Sasson. Is there a way to do this filmically? This is her work again. Are hers only visual ideas? I've always wanted to make a film with a lot of fire in it. In the back of my mind, the elephant in the room, the ice is melting. Will desperate people look back at us and wonder, what were we thinking, making, doing? So there I list all the jobs I'm working on. I list my teaching. I list my proposals and grants that I'm doing. I talk about my dad. My dad is funny. He's 83 years old. He is still a practicing shrink. Is there a way to film him with his patients, some of whom have seen him for 40 years, who know that they will lose him? Children finding their parents' stories through photos. And by the way, what happened to this young, promising black female camera person, Melba Williams? She made this in 2005. What can happen visually if you trust things to take their own course? So I will leave you with this image right now. This is not the last image of my proposal. I will show you some more images tomorrow. But let yourself think visually tonight, even as you think in words. And we've done a lot of talking. There's been a lot of words. There's a lot of images. But try to think visually and let images lead you as you make your clock. I leave you with many mysteries. But I think that this is, we have to remember we're working with cinema, and it's not just words, right? It's pictures and it's sounds. And so it has been really lovely to be with all of you today, and that you've listened so kindly to all of my talking. But now let your mind go, and I'm really hoping someone has a crazy dream tonight. And if you have a really good and crazy dream, I want you to also consider bringing it to the class. So I will tell you one of my favorite dreams that I ever had, and then we will let you go and be free. And hopefully someone will have a crazy dream tonight. So this dream I had after I had been working in Sudan for a long time, and we were working with a security guard who was just kind of disconnected in some ways from where we were, because he was so worried about protecting us. And so I had this dream that we were standing on the side of a rushing river, and the director sees there's a big castle on the other side of the river. And the director says, I want to film that. And I say, okay, I want to try to film it. And I get the camera out, and I'm looking across the river. And then the director grabs the camera from me and jumps in the river with it. And I was like, oh my God. So I jump in the river after him and save him and pull the camera up onto the sand, and it's wet, and there's sand in the camera and water. And then the security guard comes up and says, what are you doing? And I say, well, we were trying to film this castle. And he says, oh, that's my house. And we look over, and the castle is made like a drawing. And does anyone know the work of Saul Steinberg? He's an illustrator who do many New Yorker cartoons. And I'll show you. His work is so great. I don't. So he's very famous for this drawing of, he has like drawings of New York City. Here's a good one about truth and facts. So this is a good drawing of time, right? Yeah. Facts, time, space, noise, truth, chauvinism, taxes, ambition, Nixon. Pretty good, right? So the castle, let me find a good one. So a lot of times he did completely, here's two people. right? So good. He's so good. But so the castle was like one of his drawings. It was a big castle, and it had, let me just see if I can find one more of his. Here's a good one. But it had banners hanging on it, and it said, pain, power, and fear, hanging on the castle. And the security guard said, that's my house. And he said, but you can't film it. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, maybe you can film it. He said, maybe you can film it with memory photography. I said, what is memory photography? And, oh, this is so good one. Look at this one. He said, you have to hold a cloth in front of your face so that you can't see anything, and you have to project pain, power, and fear onto everything you see. And I said, wow, I'm not sure if I can film that way. And he said, you got to try. So then in my dream, you cut to, I'm walking in this marketplace, and they're selling camels and guns and fruit. And I'm walking holding this thing in front of my face, and I say, I can't do it. And I drop it. And that's the end of the dream. So this is my wish for all of you tonight. Go forth and dream, and we'll see you tomorrow.